And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of This Is Our Life. And it's not yours, it's ours, so don't try to take it from us. Okay, I wanted to do another, let's see if this helps. I wanted to do another Okinawa video. I have so many memories from Okinawa. I'm going to touch on a few things, but I'm going to preface this video with a story as to how my father learned Japanese, because he knew Japanese from a young age. Now, you would expect most, most American soldiers to be Americans, but my father was Canadian. Although, from what my cousin tells me, when he passed away, my father said he felt more like an American than a Canadian. Regardless, my father was born and raised in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, Victoria, BC. And it's like everybody in the family were either longshoremen or merchant marine. My father and grandfather were both merchant marine. My father served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. My grandfather, on my dad's side, served in the Canadian Navy during the Second World War. My mom's dad served in the U.S. Army during the First World War, but he didn't go overseas because the war was over by the time he finished training.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And they didn't send him home on the bus, they just said goodbye. Well, thankfully he was just in Virginia, and my mother was from North Carolina.
Kind of gave him a kick in the rope and
yeah,
out of here, huh?
Yeah, so he had to basically hitchhike home. But it wasn't that far from his home, it was just a few days.
At least gave him a bus ticket.
Yeah, they should have. I mean, they take you to boot camp, they should...
Get your way home.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So... Anyway, that's my wife in the background, by the way, this beautiful woman over here.
I just threw out some stuff that was in that bag that was...
Oh, okay.
It wasn't important stuff, it was just kind of getting junk stuff, but it was getting mildewy and stinking and blah.
My father had neighbors growing up. He was from the James Bay neighborhood.
Really? He had neighbors? Oh my.
His neighbors, or he had neighbors who were from Japan, or the parents were from Japan. The children, at least some of the children, were from Canada. They were born in Canada, therefore they were Canadian. Well, when the war started, see, my father learned to speak Japanese from them. And when the war started, they were told they had to either move to the interior of Canada or go back to Japan. And my understanding is they felt like if you trust us that much, then we're just going back to Japan. Why stay here if you don't even trust us? So they went back to Japan, and two of the boys went into the Japanese Imperial Navy. Yeah, so, well, my father and grandfather both worked in the Atlantic, so they weren't fighting their own friends. But my step-grandfather, the man I grew up considering and calling my grandfather, he was on the USS Texas, the battleship Texas, and he was from Texas, by the way, and he did serve in the Pacific. But anyway, so the way my father learned to speak Japanese was from his neighbors in Canada while he was growing up, and he stayed in touch with them until he died. He stayed in touch with the family until he died. I mean, he went and visited them. The year before the year he died. He sent me pictures, which I don't have because everything was lost in the stupid fire. But anyway, so on to Okinawa. There's a reason I'm prefacing this with why my father spoke Japanese. First of all, like I said in other videos, no matter where we lived as locals. The first and last and only place we ever lived, where we even lived on a military base, was Okinawa, and that was only toward the end. At first, we lived in civilian housing in an Okinawa neighborhood. So but my father was told, he was ordered to move on base because for safety issues. It's the only reason we lived on a base. Otherwise, I would have spoken a whole lot more Japanese than I learned. I learned
those people were any real threat to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you shake a stick at them, they probably run away.
Well, Okinawans are peaceful people.
I mean, they're like,
But there's an island, and it's an island. It's part of the Ryukyu Islands, but it's not Okinawa, if you will. It's called Shima, not Iwo Jima, Shima. I may not pronounce it 100% correct, but that's awfully close. There was a very famous World War II journalist named Ernie Pyle who had requested to land with the first landing, but General Buckner, who was the commander of the battle for Okinawa, General Buckner had 3 commands, yet MacArthur had 1 more star than he did, or 1 or 2 more stars. For those who don't know, MacArthur was an idiot. First of all, the Philippines didn't have to be lost. We didn't have to lose the Philippines. It's because MacArthur was an idiot that we lost the Philippines. MacArthur was out island hopping, while people like General Buckner were actually commanding the real battles. So anyway, that kind of gives you an idea of my opinion of MacArthur.
Kind of a mess.
And all that. In the Philippines, there was fuel, ammunition, weapons, etc., etc. And MacArthur, there were troops who needed it on the front. And MacArthur just let it sit there in Manila. He let it sit there. He didn't order it to be moved to where there were soldiers in the Philippines and they were saving 1 bullet for themselves because they knew what the Japanese were going to do to them, and it happened too. But it's like, I don't have but 1 bullet left. I'm not shooting the Japanese with this thing. I'm saving it for myself. And there was plenty of ammunition in the Philippines, but MacArthur didn't order it moved up.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my rant about MacArthur. So anyway, General Buckner was the commander of the Battle for Okinawa. He was also killed overlooking Shuri Castle. He was, looking at the battle, seeing how things were going, and an enemy shell landed near him, and the shrapnel killed him. And Shuri Castle's been rebuilt since I lived on Okinawa. It was in rubble when I lived there. But anyway, Ishima, there was a ferry that went there. I don't know if it was the Veterans of Foreign Wars, or there was an organization that ran a regular ferry. But see, like I said, we always lived as locals. So that's not how we got places. My father took me island hopping. Not MacArthur island hopping, but we just went and visited the islands. And the way my dad would do it is, I would go along with him, and he'd talk to the fishermen. Hey, how you doing? You gonna be going by such and such an island, or anywhere close to it, or anybody who might be doing that? He'd talk to them, and oh yeah, I'll be, I'm gonna go by Ishima tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow in the morning, I'll take you over there. Something like that. Of course, they were speaking Japanese to him, and my dad was speaking Japanese. But we went camping out there. I loved going to Ishima. And there's a monument there where Ernie Pyle was killed. And I used to have 1 biography and one book he wrote, Brave Men, which, of course, again, everything was lost in the fire. I never read Brave Men, but I did read the biography of Mr. Pyle. I feel very bad for him and his wife. and his wife had a hard time. But anyway, I remember my father reading the monument, what was on the monument, to me. In my, so I was watching it in my mind. A Japanese sniper comes up, or was it a sniper? I think it was a Japanese sniper comes up and just takes him out. Now he wanted to land on Okinawa, the main island, during the first wave, but General Buckner said, "No, you're too valuable. We can't lose you." And General Buckner and the rest of the commanders thought it was going to be a bloodbath. It was just going to be, it was going to be worse. It was going to be the worst landing, the deadliest landing ever. Well, you know what happened? A lot of the soldiers started calling it Love Day or L Day. It was called L Day for Landing Day. After D-Day, they stopped using D designation. They started, so on Okinawa it was L Day. Well, a lot of the soldiers and Marines started calling it Love Day because they essentially landed unopposed. There was scattered sniper fire. That was pretty much it. I mean, yeah, on East Shima there was a museum. It was an Okinawan-owned, operated, whatever museum. They just found this stuff on the beaches. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you didn't really want to be just running up on those beaches back then. They had these steel spikes that I don't know how long they were, but they hammered them into the beach, and when you stepped on it, the spike went right through your foot. And they were long and heavy, so it was difficult for the Americans to take them out. For a reason, of course. You wanted the next guy behind this guy to also step on it. You didn't want him to be able to pull it out. You don't want the guy standing next to him to go, oh no, let me bandage your foot and then pull the spike out so the next guy could come in. You wanted the next guy to step on it too. But anyway, I saw what happened in my mind. It was just wow. And there was a water well on the island where you actually put a bucket down, like I would see on the TV show Lassie, and then you'd pull the bucket back up and get water. And I said, Daddy, can we get some water from the water well? Just like Jimmy or whatever his name is on Lassie? And no, son, we can't do that because he explained it to me. I mean, I'm sure he explained it to me in a way that I would have understood at that age. There are, I don't know, amoebas or something in the water that the locals are used to. The locals are used to it. It's not going to harm them. But if we would have drank it, we would have gotten sick. Probably wouldn't have died, but we would have gotten sick.
Yeah, I wish you would have.
Yeah. And so anyway, Ernie Paul landed on East Shima and was killed. If he would have landed on L Day, on the main island, he at least would have lived a little longer. I saw an interview with a guy who was a veteran from Okinawa, and you know what, there were a lot of people still, a lot of Americans who retired there. I don't know, you think of, for some reason, a lot of soldiers, they go back to live where they fought. And there were a lot of veterans from that battle that either stayed or returned to live there.
My brother Tom, he's not in Thailand, but he likes that warm, hot climate. That warm climate.
If you didn't hear my wife, her brother, he served during Vietnam. He was in Thailand, and he liked it over there. And from what I understand, he thinks it's a really great place.
He likes the climate, the weather.
And then I've heard of people going back to Europe, and some to stay. Other times they don't stay, but they marry a local woman. war really can screw with your head, man. But anyway, that's just another one of my stories from Okinawa and how we got there and why my dad spoke Japanese already. My cousin on my mom's side, she teaches at a university, and she speaks Japanese because her uncle was sent to Japan after the war as an entomologist to help improve the rice crops. So anyway, so that's bye.